Yes, in this video I'm going to tell you exactly how much money I've spent traveling. This includes backpacking around Southeast Asia, interrailing around Europe, going and working in Australia for 6 months, going on a USA road trip, Morocco, Egypt, Greece, Iceland. So I've been going through all my old accounts and bank statements to see actually how much money I spent, because I didn't know how much I spent. So now with my more recent trips, I actually track exactly, almost to the pound, how much I've spent on each trip. So one thing to keep in mind is I am not rich. A lot of people on TikTok and Instagram go, oh, you've got loads of money, your parents are rich and this, but I've earned all this money myself and I'm a budget traveler. I don't spend lots of money staying in expensive hotels, going on expensive tours. If you're interested in traveling as cheap as possible, one of my other videos I'll link somewhere. Go watch that and I explain how I did it. So let's start with Australia. I flew to Brisbane, Australia on a one-way flight for £465 and I spent the first 25 days backpacking along the east coast of Australia. Now let me grab my laptop so I don't get these figures wrong. So in the first 25 days I spent £1,100, which works out as £44 a day, which is a fair amount of money. And I was drinking, I was going out, I went on some really good tours like Whitsunday Island tour, Fraser Island tours, but they were very much worth it. It's something you have to do if you're on the East Coast. So after backpacking the East Coast of Australia, I went and worked in Sydney and I did this for 21 weeks. I actually was spending £260 a week and this included all accommodation, food, all the costs, and I actually managed to save £110 a week as well. So I flew to Australia with £6,500 working jobs back in England before I left, and I actually left Australia with a very similar amount, £6,500. So overall in Australia I spent £7,000 in 6 months. However, obviously I was earning money, so I didn't actually lose or gain any money overall. So more recently, I've been traveling around the UK, and that's because of COVID and not being able to go abroad, and I don't actually know the exact cost of how much we spent. However, we did it as cheaply as possible. We camped a lot of the time, cooked our own food, and so we kept these costs to a minimum. So let's move on to Greece. So I spent a month in Greece, and honestly, it was an amazing time. It was my first trip after COVID, and I absolutely loved it. It was so hot, so warm that it just felt amazing. Now, probably the most expensive thing about traveling around Greece is the transport. So getting ferries sometimes costs like 70 or 60 US dollars for like a 1 hour journey. And I was like, what, that is so much, but there was no way around it. Also, renting quad bikes and mopeds adds up if you're doing that every day, but honestly it's the best way to explore the island. So overall in Greece, how much did I spend? I've got the figures just on my laptop here. So I spent £1,334 for 28 days, which works out at £47.65 a day. If you include flights in that, that is £1,460 for 28 days traveling around Greece. So let's move on to my most recent trip, and that was traveling to Egypt. I spent 16 days there, and the best way to cut costs was to take the local transport. We took a 14-hour train ride from Luxor to Cairo, and that saved quite a lot of money rather than taking a flight. One of the things which adds up a lot in Egypt are the temple costs. There are so many temples and they're always 10 to 20 pounds. And if you're traveling cheap on a budget, then you're gonna spend a lot of money on these temples. Some other thing which is really expensive is a Nile cruise. If you are a backpacker, they're still really cheap, but if you're traveling on a strict budget, then they can be expensive, but they are a must do, and I do recommend them. I was actually lucky that Get Your Guide provided the trip, so I didn't actually have any costs of the Nile cruise. So for my 16 days in Egypt, I spent, drum roll, I've got to look, £350, which works out at £20.63. So overall, including the return flights, I spent £650. So let's move on to Morocco, where me and my girlfriend went there for 20 days. Morocco is great value for money, and the flights there, especially from the UK, are so cheap. So if you're looking for a little trip for a week or two, I definitely recommend Morocco. Honestly, some of the places like the Sahara Desert were stunning. So our flights from the UK to Morocco, the return ones cost £120 each, which is such great value and like flying anywhere in Europe. Whilst I was actually in Morocco, I spent £422 a day for 20 days, which works out at £20.89 a day. And if you want the overall cost, including flights, that's £542. So let's move on to Iceland. I spent 10 days here with a couple of friends and we did a massive road trip loop all the way around Iceland on the big ring road, and it was an amazing experience. How did we keep the cost low? We rented a car, obviously, which was quite expensive, but we camped every single day, and this was the best way to get around Iceland because we didn't have to go back to Reykjavik because there's not hotels and stuff all over the place. So for our camping equipment, for all of us, the rent was £124 divided by 3. Return flights from the UK to Iceland was £250 with Wizz Air. So overall, in my 10 days in Iceland, I think I spent about £800. But honestly, take that with a pinch of salt. It could be 100 less, it could be 100 more. It was so hard finding my bank statements and stuff for that because it was just all over the place. So there you go. So let's move on to the big USA road trip where I spent 3 weeks road tripping around the US, and one of the best experiences I've done, and I can't wait to do it again. So for my return flight from the USA to the UK was only £478, which I thought was amazing. So how we kept costs low is we camped basically anywhere we could in the RV, not quite camping, but we slept in the RV and basically had free spots and never paid for a camp night, which was amazing. We had to spend money getting water sometimes, but obviously that wasn't that much. We also kept costs low by cooking in our RV every day, and we hardly ate out, which saved a lot of money. Our RV rental for 21 days was £420, but that was between 5 of us, so take that into account. If there's only a couple of you, it could be a lot more expensive, but trust me, our RV was massive. So overall, my USA road trip, just for me, cost £2,000. Honestly, again, take this with a pinch of salt. It's maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but that's how much I spent. And honestly, I would spend that again because it was such an amazing trip, and the USA is more expensive than other places. So there you go. So let's move on to Interrailing. Now this was my first trip without my parents, so maybe a little bit scary, but it was great fun. I did it with 8 friends, and then a 9th friend joined us halfway through, and it was a great experience. We just finished school and we were just going wild, traveling on trains around Europe. So we did this for 26 days and we went to 8 countries and 11 cities, which was so fast paced. And maybe take it a little bit slower if you're doing it. So the thing we found about backpacking Europe was the hostels are so expensive. They range, if you're very, very lucky, £10 a night, going up to £20+ a night. So for my individual Interrail pass, where I had 22 travel days within a month, that's cost £322. And I recommend we booked it 6 months early, which is why we got it for a really good price. So overall, on my Interrailing trip, for 26 days of traveling, including the return flight, the Interrail pass, accommodation, food, everything, it was about £1,500. So let's move on to the last one, but the big one, my 6.5 months in Southeast Asia. But I tell you what, this is probably the best value of money you can get in pretty much anywhere in the world. Within these 6.5 months, I traveled Sri Lanka and all around Southeast Asia, and it was such an amazing experience, and I recommend anyone just to do the same because it is amazing. Overall, I think the cheapest places I went to was Vietnam and Indonesia, but not including Bali. That's more expensive, and I could easily spend under £20 a day in these areas. As you may guess, Singapore was the most expensive place I went to, and I was there for 4 days. I did book my hostel well in advance, and I did get a cheaper deal. So I think it only cost me about £12 a night. So you probably want to know about daily budgets in Southeast Asia, and honestly, they all vary a little bit, but if you are good with budgeting, you can pretty much travel anywhere in Southeast Asia on £20 a day. If you want a bit more flexibility, maybe go to £25 a day, £30 a day, and this allows you to do a lot more and not worry too much about money. Let's move on to the figure of how much money I spent in 6.5 months in Southeast Asia. And honestly, I think this is great value for money. So I spent £5,700, and this includes all flights around the region, all accommodation, food, all that stuff. It doesn't include travel insurance, but it even includes my return flight home. Now, I'm going to tell you how much money all of this is together if you haven't calculated it yourself. So let's do that. I've got to add it up. So how much did I spend in all of these trips put together? Now I've got the figure here, but honestly take this with a pinch of salt because I didn't include like bits of traveling around Europe. I think I've missed a couple of flights off in places. So this is probably the minimum I would have spent. So that figure is £19,652. So pretty much 20, let's say 20 grand of traveling all of these places. I didn't know I'd spent 20 grand on all of these trips before like planning this video. So it was quite interesting for me to think, wow, I've actually spent quite a bit of money. But yeah, there you go. If you found it helpful, which I'm sure you did, please hit the like button. A lot of people don't share this financial stuff with you because it's more personal, but I have, so please hit the like button, subscribe, because I'm going to Thailand tomorrow, if you're watching the video when I release it. If you've got any questions, message me on Instagram, leave them in the comments and I will get back to you. I will see you in the next video. See you then.